My inspiration for this webinar was to, in this time of year, think about the transition from 2025 to 2026. How do I say this in a kind way? I'm tired of the propaganda that says you need to force yourself through motivation, suffer through creating new action tasks for the year ahead so you can accomplish things. And just the mindset propaganda. You know how to have a good mindset? You set your mind in a way that works. And so the fundamental core principle of today is to assist you in that process. How to set your mind in a way that can allow motivation to be effortless, to the behavior that you choose to use in your life to help you perform activities, to be a better person, whatever it is. I'm all for flow. And I think one of the biggest neurolinguistic programming principles that I've learned in my life is how to work with your mind, not against it. How to be present within yourself, not outside of yourself. So we're going to get into some really great stuff today. Thank you all for being here. This is being recorded. You will get sent the recording. I think I have it set for 3 hours after my little spiel today. So the hidden psychology behind motivation, self-sabotage, and human behavior. Many of you here have been a part of my ecosystem for a while. We've learned neurolinguistic programming together, or we know each other through other networks and fractals, and I appreciate you for being here. So if this information is a reminder for you, allow it to continue to be an igniter towards your best self, your best life. If you're just meeting me for the first time today, I am so grateful to be able to present information to you that can help you understand yourself even more. That is the goal. That's why I call it codes of transformation. I'm doing this webinar because these codes have been invaluable to me. They've been so priceless and helpful, and they are stuff that I never, ever learned in academics. Even through the years of school that I went to and a lot of the self-development books that I've read, I think there are some core principles that I can hone in on today that you've never even heard of. So give me a chance. Give me a chance. I want you to have more clarity, more understanding, and more momentum. My intention for this webinar is to hit higher level learning concepts that can assist you if you want to create more motivation, if you want to stop self-sabotaging, if you have some of those characteristics, and overall, what human behavior is and looks like. And if you have any questions, this is webinar, so I'm just we don't have a Zoom room going on, but if you have any questions, just put them in the chat, let me know, and I'll be able to support you. What are codes? What codes of transformation? There's a metaphor I heard on a podcast once, and I really appreciate the metaphor. The idea is about approaching liquid in a container. Right? So if you have liquid in a container, if you have a glass of water, for instance, it's very important that you understand where they meet, where they mix, and where they remain separate. Right? I don't want to give you a glass of water and then have you chew on the glass. You know what I mean? Like there's certain principles here. What I'm showing you is today, what I'm talking about and what I am is a container teacher. You can have whatever liquid you want in the container. That is your context. That is your life. But what I want to be able to support you is helping create a container that can allow you to hold the liquids metaphorically. And I think me being a container teacher also allows I call it a very humble nature, right? I don't have the answers for you, but my idea is that I can help increase the chance of you understanding yourself by facilitating the education of the container. And that is so important to me because I know that I don't have the answers to your life. I know that you do in some way, shape, or form. The solutions are within you, right? Every person has all the resources they need to achieve and succeed their with their desired outcome. Oh, what a relief. You got you. You can do this. Can't you? So with these codes, they're going to be presented from a model. I use the model of neurolinguistic programming. Why I appreciate this model, first of all, if you don't know what it is, neuro is brain, linguistic, language, and programming. So it's the way the language of your brain is programmed in your life. Imagine if you had learned these principles sooner. Imagine how many people could walk around with more confidence, higher self-esteem, more self-worth, and more embodiment if they only learned how to truly be with themselves even sooner. But thankfully, no better time than now. NLP to me, or these principles, right? I'm not selling you NLP today. What I'm sharing with you is ideas that are formulated through the container of NLP. I think it is so useful because to me, it umbrellas over everything. NLP umbrellas over human design, astrology, Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, any kind of system of understanding life. I think NLP is like this little umbrella that's over it, because if you don't understand your neurolinguistics, none of those models will truly make sense. The only way to understand if your ideas are being inspired by other people are to know what tonalities are within your mind that are you or not you. And it sounds a little esoteric and woo-woo, but it is, you know. There's like this fine line between the 3D and the 5D, where you can allow yourself to be grounded here, but there's magic that happens in each and every moment, and there's magic that happens in each and every opportunity to shift. And all it takes is one change of one thought to allow the trajectory of your life to move. Hi, I'm Aubrie Pohl. I'm an NLP master trainer. Just to give you a little bit of context of myself, I've been studying neurolinguistic programming for about a decade. I have 6,500 hours of recorded teaching. This is what I do. This is my jam. I am a speaker. I share information about personal development. I've been a coach for 15 years of my life in some way, shape, or form. And I am so motivated to help people live a life that is true to themselves and feels good, right? This is the goal, just to enjoy the experience. I have 43 certifications under my belt if you need a little bit of credentials. And right now I also work for Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi as a success coach in their company. So I was recruited after doing my own thing for a while, and now I'm a part of a big company with big names, and it's really fun. And you know, it's cool because even with working for Dean and Tony, you know, I've been following Tony Robbins for so many years. And then you see him in person and you're like, oh my gosh, this is just a normal dude who just had willpower, determination, perseverance to get to where he's at. And I wonder how much he's accomplished in his mind through things like this. Here's the big disclaimer before I really go into motivation and self-sabotage. The big disclaimer is that all models are wrong, but some are useful. Well, why would you be teaching something, Aubrie, if it's wrong? Because what I mean is, and this is what keeps me humble, all models are wrong because language is arbitrary. Language and the words that we choose to use have different meanings, sometimes a different meaning from person to person. So there's no permanent meaning per word. There's an agreed upon definition. But what keeps us grounded in the idea that all models are wrong, but some are useful, is the fact that that points to the magic that's available in subjective interpretation. Your meaning that you make out of your life becomes your life, right? The quality of your life is the sum total of the emotions you allow yourself to experience. on a day-to-day basis. So if I could assist you in allowing yourself to experience more emotions that you want to experience and less emotions that you don't want to experience, the quality of your life might go up. And so instead of falling into all of these hustle culture, force-fed motivational stuff for the new year, how about we approach motivation a different way? How about we look at self-sabotage? Instead of you being against yourself, maybe there's a different thing that we can look at. Ready? Let me put some stuff in the chat. How are we feeling? Any questions so far? We've got a good amount of people here. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. When you get to know you, you get better at everything that you do. And I started honing in on this idea, and I love this idea, because what is self-development? What is NLP? What is human design? What are all of these formats? Well, these are things that, what I would say, light up the liminal spaces in life. Liminal spaces. Get this. So the liminal spaces, and I love this topic. I've gotten so into it lately because I see it, right? The liminal spaces are the spaces in between. And this is exactly where the work of what we're talking about is. Viktor Frankl has a quote. He says, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose what we make of it, to choose the experience. That liminal space between what happens and what you react with, what you make sense of it. Beautiful. And so within that liminal space as well, that's where communication takes place. That's where meta communication takes place. This is NLP's domain, is in the liminal spaces of life. And, sometimes you can feel those spaces as well. There is a pause between an event and the way your mind is perceiving it. And you get to make a decision. And so if I could help boost some information within that decision to support you and encourage you, I would love to do that. The space is in between. The liminal space is the moment that meaning is formed. That's where you assign your meaning. That's where you choose interpretation. That's where your emotional state is lit up. So NLP slows down what normally happens too fast to see. And instead of having unconscious reactions to life, like, oh, this person's just a hothead, they just get angry and they spew anger is what they do. Can that person change? Of course. But they need to slow down the event and what's happening in their mind to be able to change. Human behavior can sometimes feel automatic or unconscious because that liminal space is compressed in the moment. But if we just let ourselves know that there's a gap where we can do work to have better responses for ourselves and for our life, this is how our awareness becomes our agency. This is how we're much more able to shift if we want to. And that liminal space exists in the communication too, because communication isn't just the words that are being said. It's what I mean, how I encode it in my brain, how I say it, how you interpret it, and then what you think I meant. Oh, to me, it's a miracle that we can have that kind of level of interpretation that we do when all of that is happening with an individual's subjective experience. So topics like today and NLP and whatever all this is that I'm talking about, they don't just change how you speak, it changes how meaning travels in your world. So how do we work inside the liminal space? We ask ourselves to hear what's underneath the words. We ask ourselves to adjust language so that it lands more accurately to how we mean it. And we're not just talking. You're not just living, you're shaping those spaces in your life. And it's so effective when you start changing those things. It doesn't force change, not into force. We don't want to bypass emotion either. We want to train awareness and observation so that choice is alive in us. And it's not about creating power. It's about understanding the power that is already inside you and your ability to change when you want to. Let's go into motivation. Let's go into what motivation means to you. So if you want to put in the chat and if you want to write down what is your definition of motivation, how do you interpret motivation? How do you know when you're motivated? What does motivation look like? What does motivation feel like? Internal alignment, I think, to me, is the source of sustainable motivation. What do I mean by internal alignment? Well, when your actions align with what lights you up. It is so hard. Okay, it is more challenging to get your body to do something that it doesn't want to do. So how can we create more alignment so that we are taking action upon what lights us up? Internal alignment is when your goals match your values, when your actions match your values, right? All behavior is values clarification. And internal alignment is also when your nervous system feels safe to move forward. It feels good about moving forward with that behavior. When you don't have motivation, that's when you don't have motivation when you're chasing goals that you think you should want, but you don't really want. You'll have less motivation when you're performing ambition instead of actually embodying it. And if motivation constantly is dropping off, it's not because you're lazy, it's because something is misaligned. And this is why all the New Year's propaganda, you know, the whole metaphor, and I worked in gyms for over a decade, how everyone comes to the gym the first week of January and literally only 30% of those people are still showing up in February. Why? Because they just don't have the internal alignment, whether it's a mindset change or a behavior change. So your internal alignment for you will allow your motivation to be easy. It will fuel your system to keep moving forward. Okay, what do some people put? Focus, awesome. Movement towards a goal, what encourages your mind, what propels you to action. You feel unstoppable, right? Because you have that internal alignment where your thoughts meet what lights you up, and then that meets your behavior. Okay, so what does that feel like? When I say internal alignment happens when your actions are aligned with what generally lights you up. What do I mean by lights you up? I think it means you actually have energy for it. You feel a pull towards doing what that thing is, whether it's working out, eating better, you know, reading more, whatever thing you want to do, pursuing a different hobby or a different career, whatever it is. My goal is to help people target their mindset so that behavior is more effortless. And when you find what lights you up, yeah, just like Cherie said, you feel unstoppable. So within your nervous system, you have a strategy for making a decision, and you have decision-making clarity when you hone into it. And it's different for everyone, you know, depending upon who you are, depending upon your lifestyle, depending upon your design, but you have a unique decision-making process within you where there's a yes, and you're not second-guessing yourself, you're not procrastinating, and you're not needing constant external validation. that's when decisions come from the wrong place. When decisions are coming from the right place, your action feels cleaner. There's less friction, less force, and more momentum that's happening. So motivation flows when you are making decisions from your internal authority, not from borrowed logic of who other people are telling you that you should be. Oh, what a relief. What a relief that you don't have to follow others' models of the world. What a relief that you can hone in on the yeses and nos that are coming from your nervous system. In order to do that, you get to shed the layers of other people's thoughts, opinions, and ideas of how they want you to show up. Borrowed beliefs from other people are what drain your motivation. And I think so many people are trying to feel motivated about goals that came from parents or cultures or social media or comparison. And so honing in to what true desires you have, then motivation doesn't feel forced. Discipline doesn't feel heavy. Self-judgment will decrease. And you cannot out-discipline misalignment because you won't stick to it, right? That happens to all the people in the February that stopped showing up at the gym, right? It's because they tried to out-discipline misalignment and it doesn't work. So through this NLP lens, if you have resistance to something, that's information. It's feedback. Everything that happens is feedback. Lack of motivation is feedback for you to align yourself with your actual ambitions and your goals and your dreams. That's when the unconscious mind is communicating. And there might be a difference between what you consciously desire to happen and then what's unconsciously running in the back end of the system. Really easy example is someone that wants to lose some weight, but then they force themselves through the workout and then they go home and maybe they overeat at night. And there's that misalignment still. But maybe they think, I know I want to be healthy and lose weight, but there's still something else running in the system. And that is the programming. And there's nothing right or wrong about programming. It just is. It's just the effect of experiences that you've had in your life. This is why neuroplasticity, belief in change, neurolinguistic programming, all these can be helpful resources because it shows you that you are not who you were. You are not who others told you that you need to be. You are who you decide to be today. And you can change if you want to. You can stay the same if you want to. The alignment is what makes it feel good or not. The alignment within your values, your beliefs, your opinions, and your self-view are what can embrace the flow of motivation. So what does it look like to you to reclaim authentic motivation in this moment? If you were to reclaim authentic motivation, is there anything that you want to move towards? Or is there anything that you're moving towards that isn't working for you because it's not in true alignment with what you really want? So when you're going out and about in your life, to find that alignment, you ask yourself better questions. Oh, the art of questions. Huge. Because if you start asking yourself better questions, you'll understand the neurolinguistics of your mind even more. Ask yourself questions, and it can be this easy. It can be this easy. Do I actually want this? And then see what the answer is from within. Or if you're finding resistance, maybe like what part of me is coming up to protect myself right now? Or what actually would feel in more alignment? Do I need to make a change? What would that change be? These are the questions that we want to start to elicit within our neurolinguistics, within our mind. As easy as it is, sometimes we forget to do that. Sometimes we will get into a job or some life path or some relationship, whatever it is, without asking ourselves if that's actually in alignment with what we truly want. So to tie it all back, honing in on your internal representation. So by internal representation, I mean, what are the thoughts, the feelings, and the pictures that come up when you think of what it is you want, when you think of that desire that you're trying to get motivated towards. And then you can ask yourself, instead of saying, how do I make myself do this to motivate myself? It's not, how do I make myself do this? It's, what would make this naturally compelling? What would make this happen easily and effortlessly? Like with this webinar. This webinar is something that I wanted to do. And something about me is I can make presentation slide decks. I totally can. And I get a lot of resistance when I do it. So I asked myself, okay, Aubrie, I'm doing this webinar. What would make it naturally compelling and more easy? Oh, don't do a slide deck. Just write some notes and flow. Okay, easy. Woo, what a relief. In comparison to other people, well, this person has like this super fancy slide deck, whatever it is. But if I step out of comparison, I hone in on what I'm good at, and I just talk from my heart and talk from my experience, it allowed it to flow much more easily. It was fun. So motivation follows aligned internal representation, aligned emotional state, and aligned identity. Change doesn't come from pushing harder. It can. I mean, that's how you can build big muscles. I get it. But change also comes from seeing more clearly and understanding yourself more. When motivation becomes authentic to you, it doesn't need to be chased. It'll organize your behavior naturally. And I know there's some of you in the chat right now and in the room that I've had these conversations with, you know, in regards to life or fitness or career. It was like, oh, everything got easier when I actually remembered who I am and what I wanted to do. That's why I like motivation. It's not something that you need to force. It's something that you get to flow from understanding who you are, what you want, what your outcomes are. Great. Yeah. Nothing can distract me. There isn't anything else my mind thinks about. I know when I have to do other things first, so I can be clear with that focus. Beautiful distinction about motivation. And then sometimes those relationships fall out of alignment when we change what we want. And yeah, it is true. It is true. And sometimes that's what needs to happen for you to be in even more alignment with your life. Cool? Does that feel good for motivation? If you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat, or go ahead and write a takeaway that you got about motivation from this. So instead of start the new year going to the gym 30 days in a row when you haven't been doing that lately, that's not going to keep the consistency that you want. But finding alignment with what feels good for you and then moving towards that goal will work a lot better. Self-sabotage. Now we're going to go into the next topic. I bring up this, but I don't want to presuppose that every person self-sabotages. Some of us grew up in healthy family systems with motivational parents, with a lot of, you know, some people just don't self-sabotage, but some people do. And I think self-sabotage has a bad rep. Self-sabotage, in my perspective, and from what I've learned about NLP, neuroplasticity, psychology, self-sabotage isn't a pathology. It's not something to shame. Self-sabotage is pattern recognition and identity disentanglement. Like, no behavior is random. Something is underlying within the programming that promotes that behavior. So some examples of self-sabotage are smoking too much, drinking too much when you don't want to be, eating too much, destroying relationships, being a rebel in your job, whatever it is, whatever the self-sabotagey thing is, from an NLP perspective, and I love this, right? This brings in the beautiful, hopeful, motivated system that is NLP. Every behavior is organized around a positive intention. And self-sabotage is not an enemy and something that we need to fight against. It is a misaligned protector or a misaligned activist within our body. The idea is that if some behavior persists, it is doing something important for the nervous system. And this is one of the core principles that we learn within NLP, is that every behavior has a positive intention, because these behaviors, they're usually attempting to keep you safe or maintain a sense of belonging in the world, or preserving an identity of some sorts, avoiding emotional threat. So the problem is not the intention, it's the strategy. So let's break it down. I mean, if you have a behavior that you're doing that you don't want to be doing. I worked with a lot of people that they're like drinking more than they want to be, or they're hitting the bong too much, or they're smoking cigarettes too much. And they're saying, I'm doing these things that I don't want to be doing. Okay, well, why are you doing them? Not why are you doing them? Instead, ask, what is the positive intention that's underlying the behavior? And I'm so grateful for this reframe, because the old view of self-sabotage being a separate evil part of you, we can get rid of that and instead encourage more self-awareness and self-love, because those behaviors have a higher level value that they're trying to reach. Maybe it's safety or predictability or loyalty or escape or control or a familiar emotion that felt good. So ask yourself, what is this behavior trying to do? If somebody's procrastinating and they're not, I work with people that are launching businesses. Well, they're not doing what they want to be doing. They want to be sharing their brilliance to the world, but instead they're not. Why? Because something underlying is holding them back. What is it? Well, oftentimes to them, it's scary to be seen. It's a lot to be perceived by the world. So if they just don't put themselves out there, then nobody will see them. And it's safer. And I get it. But how can you love yourself, find that safety, and do the behavior that you want to do? So when you chunk up to the higher level value that the bad behavior is actually going for, you're not self-sabotaging. You're meeting your nervous system with what it needs. It's just a bad strategy. You don't want to be doing that thing. If it's causing harm to your system, or it feels really in misalignment with who you want to be, chunk up to the value and switch the behavior. If somebody smokes a lot of cigarettes because they want to relax, okay, relax is the thing. So what are 10 other ways that you can relax that don't have the same effects on the body? What a relief, right? What a relief that you can actually love yourself through every single moment. What a relief that you can actually be on your own team instead of fighting against yourself. And you might not know until you know. But once you know, you can never not know. Once you shine light on the positive intentions behind the behaviors, you've got it. Now it's just about navigating the actual output. Then that comes back to the motivation thing and staying in alignment with your desires, your identity, and your goals. Is that making sense? It feels so good for me. I've had a couple self-sabotaging behaviors that I used to do. And if I look back on it, I see, oh, that was a way of handling anxiety. Oh, that was a way of keeping my heart safe, my poor little heart safe. Yeah. And you can see it now that, oh, okay, I did those things because of this. And to me now, there ain't no excuse to keep doing really bad behaviors once you have the beacon of awareness. And that's what these ideas that I want to teach are those lights of awareness, so that you can, instead of opening up the closet of your mind with a pen light and like searching for it, you can open up the closet of your mind and put a whole floodlight there and see everything. I was like, oh, okay. And then you just organize it in a way that supports you. In regards to self-sabotage or, personal alignment, identity obviously has a big deal to do with it. I mean, identity obviously is where a lot of people will get stuck. Well, who am I if I'm not a smoker or a drinker or, somebody that destroys relationships because my mom and dad always did that? And well, if I'm not an angry person, my whole family has anger issues, so I must. And it's these, we call them complex equivalences. It's like when one part of your brain equals something else, right? My whole family are alcoholics, therefore I am one. That's a complex equivalence. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true at all. You are an individual. But if you tell yourself that, you create that complex equivalence as if it is true. And this is where language gets arbitrary. This is where beliefs are only true if you make them true. And, Shayna's here, and she was the first one, I think at some point, she's coming to my mind right now, where she was like, the word lie is in between belief. So what lies are within some of the beliefs that you have that aren't necessarily true. And they're hidden behind the belief. Oh, tricky. So we want to recognize, is it my personality? Is it my identity? Or is it an adaptive response from an old programming that doesn't need to be there anymore? So we want to separate the observer, you, from the pattern. You want to separate the identity from the strategy. And when those adaptive responses are no longer your identity, change can be a little easier too. When I was binge eating, it definitely continued because I put that identity in my world. And it's been a long time now, about 8 years, since I released that identity. And I literally told my brain, you will no longer identify with this behavior, this type of person, because the justification was only getting more enabled through the identity. So asking yourself, is there any kind of unconscious identity that I'm still holding on to that needs to be released? And when you release it, sometimes I think you can hold yourself in that space in between, but also, what if you were to give your unconscious mind a new identity? Then, naturally, the idea is that your mind will create better neuroplasticity patterns towards that. There's actual myelin sheath in like the receptors of your brain that the more you use it, the more you have it. The less you use it, the more you lose it. So retraining your mind, honing in on new identities, new behavior, new insight actually makes this change work. To remove yourself from old identities and adjust accordingly in the moment. It's the pattern, to distinguish the pattern, then to shift the pattern. It is pattern re-education. And when you realize that things like self-sabotage were never against you, everything softens and change becomes more possible. Yeah, give yourself and your unconscious mind a new identity. It's deep work. Sometimes it's fun because you discover, oh, I've been honing into this idea ever since I was a child, you know. But you're you, and you are who you are now. And I am so for that idea, and it has worked a lot for me. And I think I'm fundamentally a different person than I used to be. I used to get held back in school. I used to be like the girl in the corner that was too shy. And now I do this kind of stuff because, oh, what a relief. I can be around people now because I let go of those old patterns that were against it or, you know, afraid of it, whatever it is. So human behavior. I was almost saying it's been like 45 minutes. Thank you all for being here. Okay, so human behavior is awareness plus alignment plus action. When your patterns are unconscious, behavior can feel automatic, but when your patterns become conscious, choice becomes available. And this is the awareness that we're talking about today. That awareness is what creates choice. Awareness doesn't create change, it creates choice. And then you create the change. The awareness lets you see the pattern that you're living in. And it's not the insight that will rewire the behavior, but it's the alignment and then the new strategy that will. And then unconscious competence, your brain becomes an entirely different way of being. So action can then align with the internal state. And this action is not one that comes from pressure because that can feel too heavy. It's not one that comes from misalignment, but it comes from alignment, which makes things much more sustainable. If you have the same action, but a different internal state, you'll have a completely different result. So from awareness to alignment to action, what's next? What actually needs to happen in your life to feel more of that alignment? And how will you know? So we talk a lot about the change, and then we have this idea that we call future pacing. Because when you make a decision to change, then you want to ask yourself, okay, well, what will that look like in the future? How will I be instead? What do I want to embody that's different than the way I'm living now? And so what is that for you? As we look into, you know, the new year and we make some New Year's goals, but really, what is the embodiment that you can commit yourself to so that the action and alignment is effortless and easy? And then that awareness is asking yourself, well, what's happening? The alignment is asking yourself, is this mine? Is this actually mine, or is it someone else's idea? And then the action is one of my favorite questions. What is the next smallest step to get there? NLP works because it's not motivational hype to me. It's great magical concepts that help increase motivation, but it's not rah, get shit done. It is honing into the repeatable structure that's available to you that you can create, that brings you clarity, that brings you confidence, and that brings you success. And how can we soften the forceful pressures within ourselves to allow the alignment to show? So is there anything that your brain is demanding of you that's not really yours? This, you know, I talked to a couple people last week. I went to this intentional New Year's thingy, and people were saying all these different goals, and I want to do this, I want to do that, and I'm wondering, is that in alignment with them, or is it force-fed through the New Year's propaganda? And what if we just for a moment release the idea of the New Year's, release the idea that there's this transitionary period? And I'm actually all for the idea that, you know, the New Year's in the middle of winter, what a weird time for New Year's. Usually it's like in the awakening of spring. And I'm sure Jana knows about this stuff. Like that's when the new life happens. So if winter is not your thing for this whole new year, new me thing, that's the alignment I'm talking about. That's the inner standing I'm talking about, is how to make any new day the you that you want to be. We're not controlling human behavior. We're cooperating with what is and what we can adjust. And then, my friends, then you can find even more success than you would have ever imagined. I've had the opportunity to work with many clients that, they just didn't do the thing. They weren't losing the weight that they wanted. They weren't achieving the goals that they wanted. They weren't in the career that they wanted to be in. And through a, conversation with me, I asked the right questions for them to see the internal alignment that needed to be there. And once that internal alignment was there, switching careers, losing weight, everything, becoming much more of who you wanted to be. And in the world of information that we're in the age of information. You're inundated every single day with people telling you how the world works, which way it works, what you should be doing. So I'm proud to stand here today and be like, turn it back on yourself and ask what's right for you. Just those little internal nudges to listen. And what I'm saying today is, allow the insight to wake you up. I'll go into it as the weeks go on. We've got 4 weeks together, so thank you for being here. Because maybe I stayed very kind of chunked up and generalized today because I wanted to get into the information about human behavior, how there's an external event, and then you have an internal response. But the liminal space in between the external event and your response is the entire programming. It's the filters you have. It's the time, space, matter, energy. It's your attitudes, your beliefs, your opinions, your traumas. All of that is going to affect the way that you output behavior. You don't see the world the way it is. You see the world the way you are. So who are you? And is there anything that you get to remind yourself of now to come back to who you truly are? To thin the veil of who the world pressures you to be and to just let it all release and love yourself fully. Yeah, we don't have a limit to New Year's. You can shift and change and be you, whoever you want, whenever. Oh, what a relief. Consistently. Things like NLP, ideas like neuroplasticity training. Let me breathe deeper. Let me relax. Because it's not about, I like the quote that says it's not about becoming who you're meant to be, but it's about shedding the layers of who you're not, because you have that core within you that has that internal alignment, that has that decision maker. I mean, you are built in a fantastic human body and nervous system that is so miraculous and complex. And the more that you allow yourself to work with it, the more that you stay present in the process. And if something happens outside of you, listen to the way that your mind is working. Listen to the thoughts that are happening. Who am I if I'm not the person and not the thoughts inside my head? Because you're not. You're the one that sees the thoughts in your head. Wow. So you're above that. You're beyond the language. You're beyond the liminal spaces, and you get to observe them. You get to see your patterns, your reactions, your responses to life. And then you get a grip on everything, a loose grip. And you get to act in alignment. All right. I think this is good. There's a line in the Torah that says, I am who I am becoming. Ooh, I like that. I am who I am becoming. I am who I always have been. I am who I choose to be in the future too. Any and all of those can work depending upon where you are and what your subjective experience is. So thanks everyone for being here today. I am so grateful. I'm excited that we have a couple more weeks together. And if you have any specific questions, please reach out to me. I'll put my Instagram in the chat. You're going to get sent the replay of this and you can reply to that email too. I'm here. I'm grateful that you are with me for the next 3 weeks. I think next week, we're going to go more into the emotional space of the feelings, the actual feels and how to feel the feels. And we'll do a couple NLP techniques that can maneuver through some of those feelings, depression, anxiety, negative emotions, things like that. And then we'll go into a leadership conversation on week 3, and week 4 will be about how better coaches create change in moments, not minutes, or something like that. All right, I appreciate you. You're going to get an email after this. I'm going to do a soft invite right now to look into the NLP Academy if you're interested in what I was talking about today, but I'm sharing in the chat the testimonials. I think the testimonials are really what make it special. And I've got a lot of them. There's like a ton on the page. I think when you get to hear the words that are coming from people's heart and soul, it can be really transformative. So check out that. You'll get an email later that talks about, the NLP Academy link and stuff like that. But I'm not here to sell you NLP. If the door's open, if you want to come in, it starts January 17th. But what I'm here is to share these codes with you and for you to take it and just launch yourself into even more happiness and success in your world. That's truly what I'm so excited about. And I could share this stuff all day. I do so many seminars in regards to this, and this is what I teach, and I just can't get over it because I want you to have a good time out here in this complex human thing that we're in. So, all right, everyone, thanks so much for being here today. I will see you soon, and take care of yourself. Thank you for being you. I'm so glad you are. We'll see you soon.